Before this video starts, I just want to give a massive shout out to all my channel members. If you want to receive a shout out, then become a channel member today and you'll be shown on screen like all these other channel members here. Anyways, enjoy the video. Boss battles, those parts of the game where you have to face a foe that is way stronger than usual, and those that truly test your skills in a certain video game that will leave a lasting impact. Good boss battles also allow the player to truly express their preferred playstyle depending on the genre of game. The Battle Cats has a ton of boss battles of its own that range in quality from how good or bad they are as a boss battle, as there are some pretty bad boss battles that exist in this game. For the purposes of this video, a boss battle is an enemy that is special to a specific stage and for the most part only appears in said stage or only appears in a few stages thereafter, barring the Empire of Cats bosses in Clee1, but for those enemies, I'm only counting their story introduction stages. There are three factors I want to go over on what I think makes a good Battle Cats boss, and to give an example of one boss where the factor works and another where this factor doesn't work. Just one more thing, a bad boss battle could still be remembered by a lot of people just because of how bad the battle is or how frustrating it can be, and to keep in mind that this video will discuss these factors from a no Uber perspective. If you enjoyed this analysis of what makes a good or bad Battle Cats boss, then be sure to give this video a like, and if you enjoy what you see here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and comment down below on what your favorite boss battle is in this game. With that out of the way, let's delve into the factors that I think make a good Battle Cats boss. The first factor I want to talk about is how a player may approach a level. Good boss battles allow a wide variety of units to be viable in the stage, depending on how a player wants to approach a level. I think a level that shows this off really well is Learn to Love. The way this level is structured allows two different approaches to completing the stage. The first, and more traditional way, is the Endurance route, where you take your time to slowly chip away at the support that is several Lenoirs and a Sunfish Jones, while trying to keep Mina away from the base. The other method involves rushing down Mina to take her out before any of the tanky support prevents you from attacking her. This is a riskier strategy, but if pulled off, can make the level a lot less stressful, and if you do it fast enough, you can win the stage before the support even shows up. As for a stage that doesn't allow any sort of variety of strategy is Adherence to Virtue. Sage of Mind Soractis and Doge Dark are the only two enemies present. However, the sheer pushing power of Soractis, along with the Sage enemy's ability to resist crowd control effects, basically means to have any sort of chance of winning, it requires the use of both Cyberpunk and Sniper the Deadeye. Otherwise, the sheer pushing power of Soractis will overwhelm anything you throw at them. The only real ways to easily stall them is if you have an extremely boosted Octopus, and I mean boosted, Metal Cat, and to have high level slow base foundation and Thunderbolt decorations to reduce Soractis' damage and freeze time respectively. Out of all of the no Uber videos I have seen others do outside of my Crackpot Row Floating S video, there are a total of 12 unique units used, with another 4 used for combos. If that doesn't show you how restrictive this level has in having variety, then I don't know what will. I think Adherence to Virtue could have been a level that could show more varied strategies if they toned down Soractis' damage by half. This would still make him a threat, but not to the point where unless you throw every single wall at it, you just don't win the stage. Another thing that can make a boss fun is understanding the game's mechanics or teaching the player about a core game mechanic. The most obvious showcase of this being Chapter 3 Moon of Empire of Cats, which forces the player to learn perhaps the most vital thing about the game itself, and that is teaching the player on how to properly meat shield. For almost every other stage before, meat shielding can feel pretty optional, and most levels don't really try to teach this concept. However, if you haven't learned about this core mechanic of the game by this point, you are not going to win this level, but that is what makes this boss fight so good. Being forced to learn about a new game mechanic you probably unintentionally did at most can also encourage future experimentation of ways to tackle a stage with a new foe you may be struggling with. Another stage I think showcases this concept of understanding game mechanics very well is Vulcanizer, the stage for Manic Eraser. The concept here being the ability to keep ground against enemies. While Absolute Defense shows off this concept somewhat, Vulcanizer really pushes the idea that the player must keep and regain as much ground as possible. Having the stage be only a very small width and having almost every enemy be an aggressive pusher means that you need to do everything in your power from preventing ground from being lost and using units like Urarun to regain any possible amount of ground, because if your base gets pushed, it's game over thanks to Manic Eraser's Base Destroyer ability. A boss stage that doesn't really demonstrate a game mechanic very well is Prelude to Ruin, the stage where Evil Emperor Cat is the boss. This enemy is meant to demonstrate the threat that Curse and Surges can truly be, especially for early UL players. However, their extremely long attack time and really weak Surge doesn't make them that much of a threat and causes their level to be absurdly easy. In fact, this stage was so easy on release that shortly after 10.2 came out, they updated the stage to add an additional Cappy, more Sorrel spawns, and have the Old Horn spawn 30 seconds earlier. They even changed Evil Emperor Cat himself, changing his Surge from a level 3 Surge that spawned between 150 to 255 range to a level 2 Surge that spawned between 600 to 900 range. Reducing the Surge level, however, made his Surge feel way less impactful as it barely does any damage now and at most will curse your units from farther away. The problem with Evil Emperor is that they just don't really do much to be an actual threat, and the support doesn't really help them out either. I think Evil Emperor Cat could have majorly benefited from that extra Surge level that they used to have, since the difference between a 12,000 damage Surge and an 18,000 damage Surge would actually make an impact on a lot of units, but I would argue that adding an additional level for a level 4 Surge would actually make them that much more of a threat, who, while might not attack often, but when they do, can majorly disrupt your line. The last point I want to make is how memorable a boss fight is. Some of the best boss fights in video games are remembered as such for several reasons, whether it comes from sheer difficulty of a fight, the amazing rewards you gain from beating them, and its ability to wrap out a saga nicely. These two bosses were the main reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, and these two bosses are Zeroluza and Mechabun. These two bosses serve as the final bosses of their story saga in the Legend stages. Mechabun is the final boss of Stories of Legend, and Zeroluza is the final boss of Uncanny Legends. One of these bosses is remembered fondly, being an amazing challenge that serves to wrap up its saga in this climactic Battle of the Ages, and the reward perhaps being one of the best units in the game. The other boss isn't remembered as such, being very anticlimactic, and the reward for actually beating them is probably the worst legend unit obtained from their saga. If you know about these two bosses, then the answer should be very obvious. Revival of Origin is a very wonderfully made level, as this level demands your full attention to Luza's attack cycles, keeping an eye on Luza's position in the field, and the support that spawns with Luza that can easily rip your defense apart if you're uncareful. The support being Relic Doges, Sorrels, Wild Doges, and Boar Juniors are all key players in allowing Luza to actually push, as Luza can't really push on their own, but all of these supporting enemies easily allow Luza to push very close to your base, and if you aren't able to regain the ground lost from the support, it will spell game over for you. However, this fight has very consistent support spawns, allowing you to prepare your lineup with some units that deal with very specific supports, like using Awakened Doron during Sorrel waves to push the offense back and to chunk the Sorrels for a ton of health, or you can use Reborn Doguemon to wall out the wave and take them out that way. For the Boar Junior phases, you can time 2 rusher attacks from something like Bullet Train and Neo Cutter to take them out. The best part about this fight is that when you beat the level and conclude your Uncanny Legend saga, you obtain an ancient egg that is extremely expensive to hatch, relatively speaking, but this egg holds one of the best legend units in the game, Ape Lord Luza, who will make your start Uncanny Legends journey so much easier to go through, and this is even the case for Uber players due to their insane stats against relic enemies, and can make Megamajo, an enemy that's present in the next stage and is a very tanky threat, becomes a joke with this guy. These factors are what make Zeroluza not only an amazing boss to the end of Uncanny Legends, but perhaps one of the best bosses in the game. On the other side of this coin, you have Mechabun, who sadly doesn't really live up to the insane boss battle many were expecting. Unlike Revival of Origin, Eldritch Forces doesn't really have that unique of a boss concept, and the strategy for them is just as underwhelming. The idea is that you need to build up a ton of floating crowd controllers on the starting Lil Bun Bun that spawns and hope that you can stall the Mechabun till it dies. If you stall it and deal with the peon support, then great, you win. If your stall team dies, then you lose with very little chance of coming back. The biggest disappointment, however, is that the Mechabun unit isn't even that good thanks to their clunky build of being a tanky rusher that has very little damage, even after their true form and even after applying their relic targeting. It really makes them a unit you would only bring to help rush early start SOL stages, and this unit would end up being completely thrown out the window when slapsticks were added for an anti-relic answer, which happened in a total of a single update. Thankfully, if you beat all of Stories of Legend 4 times over, an actual more proper final boss shows up, being in similar vein as Zerooluza for being very difficult but extremely rewarding. This being the Eldritch Forces Invasion stage featuring Edie Ray. Unlike Mechabun, whose whole thing was you better crowd control or die, Edie allows a wide variety of strategies to be deployed here, even with the restriction. Most strats for this level tend to use cat combos to boost research speed, but these are mainly suggestions, and this stage is filled with unique ways of tackling it. One example involves Bahamut chaining, a strategy that involves using Bahamut to knock back Edie and then having Rice Ball to tank the Edie hit, keeping Bahamut alive and to continue allowing him to juggle Edie over and over. Other strats use Master Ural as an anti-relic slower to prevent Edie from pushing, allowing a mostly consistent position to be kept. The support for this stage is also very consistent, forcing the player to pay attention to spawn cycles and to have the right units ready to go for dealing with the Heavenly Hippos, Imperial Seals, and the Gory Blacks. Those watching my Battle Cats No Gacha series will know that it incorporated both Bahamut chaining and Ural stalling into one lineup, which I would argue is more difficult to do than just using one or the other, seeing as they require two entirely different mindsets and the attention of the stage demands you, but that's really the beauty of this level. The best part is that this level gives what is basically a free Awakened Bahamut for relic enemies, making the Uncanny Legends journey for many a much easier ordeal, and this level serves as an actual proper conclusion to Stories of Legend. This video sort of just started as me wanting to talk about why the Luza fight works and why something like Sorectis or Mechabun doesn't, but it eventually turned into this larger scope project of discussing game design and how to make a good Battle Cats boss. And to those that make custom stages for Battle Cats Ultimate, I hope this video has been a good lesson of well-made and unfit boss design. If you enjoyed this discussion of Battle Cats bosses, then be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what you see here, and comment down below your favorite and least favorite Battle Cats boss and why. I would love to read your answers. Also, shout out to Athani for being a silver member, and shout out to Something Something YouTube, Potato King, and Dr. Deadly for being gold members. If you want to receive a shout out like these wonderful folks here, then become a silver member or higher today, as this is a way to help support me in a way that helps keep the lights on. Channel members also get an exclusive role on my Discord server, for which you can find a link to in the description down below. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day.